Now, every family has middle childs. Mine just so happens to have 22 of them. Nearly this uncomfortable, expensive, or fashionable enough to prevent me from running in the first place with those things. Yes, this video's clickbait. I have played Pokemon Red and Blue up to like the 3rd gym when I was like 10, and Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee up to the 8th gym. Yes, I stopped before Victory Road. Don't ask me why, because I don't remember. Even if I make comments about my Pokemon character filming a music video for Crazy Frog with a whack-ass fit that makes me look like this doofus without my consent, or about how some regions are built with straight lines and highways, I will still undoubtedly still end up buying the new game. I said I was gonna buy CA for the purposes of making a video on it. Brother, that video exists just as much as my future kids and money, bro. It was torn from the fabric of reality. However, considering that we are not only a year away from Gen 10, but also on the 30th anniversary of the franchise, I figured now was the best time to finally play the games again, some for the first time, and finally see if Pokemon has really fallen off, or if the games were just built like Potential Man from the start. For Pokemon Gen 1 and 2 specifically, I will be focusing mainly on the remakes simply because those are like the best versions of the games, and they're not that different mechanically and like overall compared to their original counterparts. And more than that, do I look like I have the time to play 2 RPGs for one video? With my release schedule? I did play some of Gen 1 though. God knows I at least need some material to sign it properly. A lot of the criticisms that I have are kind of shared throughout both games though. Obviously Red and Blue have a lot of hilarious things to talk about, but I'll keep my complaints to like other things. By the way, I hope none of y'all take my opinions too seriously. I share a birth year with Diamond and Pearl, so please realize that these videos are being made by someone who just obviously stopped shitting the bed 5 minutes ago. Gen 1 is the place where it all begun, a franchise that will work in tandem with the newest AI technologies to create new, marvelous experiences. What, it isn't made by AI? How do you explain half the shit in Scarlet and Violet then? Pokemon FireRed and LeafGreen were honestly a very surprising experience because it made me realize just how fucking hard Pokemon nailed its concept on the first try. When playing through a game series, more often than not, you see that the first kid is just like the first kid in real life, thrown down ravines and lit on fire! It took them 3 tries to nail the Devil May Cry formula, and one of those attempts definitely felt like they nailed someone to a cross. Have you ever noticed how we have never heard anything about the original director of DMC2? That's because when you spread someone's ass very wide, Pokemon kind of never had this problem. I mean, think about it. 8 gyms, Evil Team, Elite Four, and the game is finished. I've been describing Emerald this entire time. The formula is clean, efficient, and makes an easy banger of a game. There's a reason they still use it. Even if an RPG series being as formulaic is kind of not the most ideal thing. I mean, then again, my wallet isn't the one getting the money for this, it's the one paying for it. The game starts out with the basic spiel of the professor, getting out the house, getting the Pokemon, and battling Fardas. For some reason, they censored a bunch of names, but left this gift of life in here. What is Pokemon trying to teach the children? I would honestly argue that the pacing of the intro is a bit faster than future entries of anything, and really, that's a good thing. Pause, I am currently playing through Emerald at the time of finishing the script. The tutorials are still not that bad so far as what I remember from Gen 7 through 9. The game lets you immediately experiment while grown-the-ass doctor sends you for errands: a loaf of bread, a container of milk, and a stick of butter. A loaf of milk, buttery bags, and whatever this dude gave me in this bag. Could be like a secret world weapon or something like that, you never know. This is honestly a really good tutorial for Pokemon. It introduces the gameplay elements so seamlessly that I can't even complain. Barely any words, teaches you first how to battle, how to catch, and somehow the game's following it would never make a tutorial that's as good as this. The only things that annoy me are the facts that like the game starts out without me having the running shoes, which is incredibly irksome for one, because I know for a fact whatever my guy has on his feet cannot be nearly this uncomfortable, expensive, or fashionable enough to prevent me from running in the first place with those things. Kanto is a region that personally is really goddamn basic from head to toe. I look at it and I just can't help but think of white bread. But the design of it is simply so smart. The region is honestly a perfect example on how to design a Pokemon map. But stop, pinch me in one cheek, slap the other, and blindfold me. Do you notice that I hadn't talked about the story of the game until now? Well, this is because I fucked up and forgot. Pokemon games are interesting because in a world full of RPGs that most people play because of the story, Pokemon is quite possibly the only RPG in which the game tells you do it for the vibes. As the series would go on, stories would eventually start adding more and more details, but you compare this to literally any other RPG and it's straight hydrogen bomb versus used condom. Dare I say solo leveling levels of plot. 10 years old, out the door, on the road with a bro. You're as broke, fight 8 folks, then the mob, up to rubber goose, green moves, Bubba Juice. Plot is serviceable. It gives you some things to do, it does what it needs to, and you can't really hate it for it. Now, don't misunderstand, Pokemon plots can be entertaining and legit good. I just wouldn't say it's the heaviest focus that these guys have in mind. That would be, like, the main gameplay, if anything. Surprisingly, this is the biggest difference between the OG and the remakes, and that's really because the originals are one bad move away from blowing you and your Game Boy to another dimension. I mean, yeah, there's stuff like stats getting changed in the later gens, but like that doesn't affect the general gameplay too much unless you're squabbling in competitive Pokemon. And look at me dead in the eyes and ask me if I'm one of those fellows. FireRed made a video basically showcasing all the main bugs, and apart from the major gameplay ones including broken stats, percentages, and moves that just don't work like they're supposed to, the most hilarious one to me is the fact that statues are canonically liquids and you can just swim on them. Jesus had so much aura, fucking inanimate objects are trying to replicate him. Aura farming is getting out of hand. Pokemon gameplay, for the most part, is pretty simple. In terms of RPGs, you could probably argue that it's just one of the simplest ones in the market. I already mentioned how the design of the region makes the world a lot more interesting to explore, with many different things being available to the player to do at the same time. But the real focus of the game is battling using the Pokemons themselves, which, yeah, Pokemon gameplay has always been very easy to understand, with its type chart, rock, paper, scissors logic leading to an emphasis in team building to create the greatest formations to overcome any obstacles. Once you get to the battles themselves, however, you'll find that outside the team building and strategy aspects, it's not like you're gonna be doing rocket science. Really? Charizard can't take a bath, silly. Bro's gonna be looking like the Witch and Wizard of Oz or like an average con-goer. I can smell you. The biggest difference between like Gen 3 and below compared to anything past Gen 4 is mainly the physical special split, which, to be fair, does make a significant difference when building teams and movesets. It's important in these games to have moves that are good against other Pokemon, but also to have moves that your mons can actually fucking use. Make that boy Alakazam learn any physical move, and I think you'll see him real deal banish along with their anti-deodorant head-ass trainers. But that makes sense, because Alakazam is also a psychic type. Those motherfuckers throw spirit shit at you. Every water move is special, and they decided to have Gyarados be a physical attacker? Bless the Lord for giving the devs the idea to do the split. I shudder to think what some of these mons will look like without it. Apart from that, the battles are pretty simple, as you either attack or heal, run away if you're getting your ass whooped by a random Pokemon, or try to catch them. When it comes to my ranking of Pokemon gameplay, what mostly matters to me are the following: team building, challenges, and pacing. And I think that FireRed does a pretty good job in all three regards. Kanto has a pretty solid Pokedex all around. It has a bunch of Pokemon that, while I wouldn't consider my favorites, like, at all, it's still a wicked list of guys that I'll look at and say, hell yeah! Matter of fact, let me give you a tour. So here we have the ones who are always in the team. These motherfuckers are gonna be 80 Poke years old and still be the main guys on the team. Also, Gyarados is there because that's like the strongest motherfucker ever. Then we have all the top picks I'll be willing to have when replaying the game on. And overall, really solid lineup of mons that I fuck with gameplay-wise, design-wise, or both. Now, every family has middle childs. Mine just so happens to have 22 of them. Lastly, there are obviously the Pokemon that I just do not want on my team. There's a higher chance of me breaking into a musical number for free in Times Square before I use Wigglytuff on my team. I was pleasantly surprised with the challenge that the game gave me. Now, granted, some of it may have been self-inflicted. The hardest battles of a Gen Z boy is in the current state of the world. It's whatever the fuck I was doing that my entire team was under-leveled for the Elite Four. Stepping into the ring with 5 sub-level 45 Pokemon in the Zapdos, they better have me looking like this! Yeah, no, I can't even lie, the Elite Four was fucking me. All this bullshit with the Aerodactyl and the AI still have a Dragonite in the back pocket? This freaky ass calculator think this shit is a game. Other than that part, however, I think that the game has a really accessible difficulty, having moments where it can sneak a couple of slaps if it so desires, but never being too difficult that it overstays its welcome. Grinding can suck my dick though, but that's a story for Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Now, there are a couple more aspects to talk about, but ones that I didn't really give that much importance or didn't have much to say about. The music is really good, but it's not my favorite, especially compared to other generations, and it's also not something that I have anything very particular to talk about. The game looks pretty, but the most interesting thing that I have to say is that while I think that the game looks visually pleasing, I do find it a little bit funny that the whole discourse with Pokemon graphics never talks about how the GBA games ain't even top 20 in their own consoles. Arguably, neither are the DS games either, maybe with the exception of Black and White 2, but even then. Like, again, I don't even think that they look bad to begin with. I just think it's funny that nowadays people just choose to ignore that part, like how parents ignore the middle childs and how I ignored those 22 middle childs of mine that I have no strong feelings about. Because I just gotta get my egotistical ass involved in the combo somehow, you know? Overall, that's pretty much the game. The Pokemon formula is definitely at its simplest here, mainly because it's the first game in the series to do it, but even with that in mind, I think that they did an incredible job with pretty much everything. Now, I know that there's the matter of the post-game and all the shit to do in there, but to be entirely truthful with you, I don't give that much of a damn. Postgame is something that I rarely do in a game, if I'm being honest. I would much rather finish a game and hop on a new one unless it's something like a roguelike or just a game with a heavy online community. I will, however, mention quickly that FireRed has a postgame full of legendaries, new places, and shit to do. So if you're also looking for some postgame content in a 20-year-old Game Boy game, then you got it, man. Would I recommend this game? Yeah. It's pretty good. Adds both an introduction to the series and a game for fans of the series that haven't played it yet. It's definitely not the best in the series, but for a first title of a very successful franchise, this is about as good as you can feasibly get. Well, that's all the time that I've had for today. I'm just a random stranger you met on the internet, but hey, just call me Suda.